Is loud. Hello, is everybody awake? Have we tested if we can hear Councilor Shaw? Yep, we're good to go. Okay, I will call this meeting of the Tigard City Council to order. City Recorder Krager, please call roll.
Councilor Shaw.
Here.
Councilor Singh. Here. Councilor Wolf.
Here.
Council President Hu.
Here.
Mayor Lube.
Here.
Youth Councilor Nog.
Everyone, please mute yourself and if you're online, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I would actually like to start off this meeting with an acknowledgement and a moment of silence for the victims of Monterey Park and Half Moon Bay for the senseless gun violence that faces America. So if you'll all join me in a moment and bow your heads. Thank you. Staff or council, do we have any non-agenda items this evening?
None from us, Mayor.
Okay, thank you so much. If anyone would like to call in today for the public comment, our phone number is 503-966-4101, and those wishing to comment should call in now to get into the queue. Anyone present wanting to comment should sign up on the public comment form at the front of the room. Assistant City Manager Nyland, please join us for any follow-up from previous public comment.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Lube. We did receive one comment at last week's council meeting. A community member opposed projects related to our climate resiliency goals. We did send a response and directed this person to learn more via our website. And we always encourage people to get engaged and add their voice to conversations and discussions. That's my follow-up for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Nyland. City Recorder Krager, we did receive one written comment today from Robert Toppling, who is requesting that we require off-street parking for all development. Was there any additional comments received today?
No, just one.
Okay, thank you so much. Do we have anyone signed up to speak? Okay, thank you so much. And Network Administrator Cleary, is there anyone on the phone or waiting to give us video public comment?
We have no callers nor viewers.
Perfect, thank you so much. We are so excited today, or at least I'm excited, I won't speak for the council, to have this joint meeting today with the Budget Committee. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. It's January and it's the perfect time to sort of kick off and have a discussion about one of the most important things we do as a city, which is where do we put our funds and what are our priorities. So if City Recorder Krager will call roll for the Community Budget Committee members, we can get started.
Carissa Benfield.
Here.
Tim Cadman. Here. Jim Knowlton.
Here.
Kelly Piment. Here. Jake Schlack. Here. Leah Voigt.
Thank you so much. For those in the room, in order for those calling in today to hear us, we actually need to be speaking into the mics, and you can turn them on and off. And when they're green, they can hear you. Okay. Thank you so much. City Manager Reimer, I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and welcome to our first Budget Committee meeting. I think one of the first things we want... No, it's not advancing. There we go. One of the first things we want to do is just start with introductions. We're excited to be here. I hopefully can speak for the team. The past couple of years, we've obviously been behind screens for those who have been part of the committee and on council. And it's just nice to be in person, starting to talk about one of the most important decisions that the council makes every year is where do we put our public resources to advance the many, many priorities that the council and the community has. And so tonight we thought we could start with some introductions and then we'll move into the agenda itself. So can we start with you, Tim? Is that all right?
Yeah. Would you like me to say my name?
Your name, maybe how long you've been on the budget committee? Or?
Okay. All right. Oh, man. Pop quiz. Name's Tim Cadman. I've been on the budget committee. This is my third mayor, so however long that's been. So, yeah.
That says it all.
All right. Thank you.
Youth counselor, we'll just go right around.
Oh, I'm youth counselor Nog. I've been here since, I guess, July of 2021. Don't know much about budgets, so excited to learn.
Hi everyone, City Council President Ikan Hu. I've been on the City Council for 24 days.
I love that you're counting. I am Heidi Lube. I'm the mayor of Tigard. I was a city councilor and city council president over 4 years, and I am at 24 days as mayor.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Jay Raj Singh, Tigard City Councilor, and I'm on the same boat, newly elected.
Good evening, everyone. Maureen Wolf, City Councilor, and guess what? Day 24. Great to be here, and thank you all for your time and commitment to the city.
My name is Leah Voigt, and I believe this is my third year on Budget Committee.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Jake Schlack. This is my second year on the Budget Committee. Last year I was the alternate. This year I'm a voting member.
Hi, I'm Kelly Piment. This is my first time on the Budget Committee. I am the alternate. I'm the new Jake.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Emily Tritch. I'm the Assistant City Manager for Investment and Infrastructure. I've been with City of Tigard for about 14 months.
Good evening, Cindy Trimp. I'm the Finance Director for the City of Tigard.
Steve Reimer again. I'm the city manager, and I'm just coming up on my 2 years. And so this will be my third budget working with all of you. I had the first year we had that kind of partial year, and now this is my second full budget with all of you.
I guess the second half to the Steve and Steve show. I'm Steve Toller. I'm a director with Baker Tilly and have been providing some assistance and support in the background in the budget development process over the last couple of years. So it's good to see you all again.
I know we also have a couple budget committee members that are joining us remotely. So if those of you would like to introduce yourselves as well, please. Let's start with Councilor Shaw.
Thank you, and good evening. This is Councilor Jeanette Shaw, and I think I may be one of the old timers in the room with over 2 years. So I'd like to pass on to the next guest.
Hi, I'm Jim Knowlton. I have been on the Budget Committee for 2 years. Actually, no, this is my third year. Sorry, time flies when you're having fun, so thanks.
Clarissa, are you available to tell us hello?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Clarissa Benfield, and this is my second year on the Budget Committee.
All right, well, thanks, everyone. As you can see, we have a variety of different tenures, and so brand new council almost, and we're excited to be working with them as well as all of you. We also have many other leadership and other teammates here in the room, as well as remotely, and so as questions come up, they'll introduce themselves as well. But we have our city attorney, assistant city manager, police chief, and many other directors that are here to join us. This thing is going backwards. So the first thing we want to do is elect our chair and secretary. And so I will turn it back over to the mayor, and this next slide should have the steps that we want to take. So Mayor, I'll turn it over to you to guide us through this part, please.
Thank you so much. And I just want to thank all of you for your dedicated service to the city and this really important committee. And we are going to ask a few of you to step up in an additional way to serve the city as chair or as secretary. And I know Ms. Voigt has served as chair previously, and I believe Mr. Cadman, you were our secretary? No. Oh, Mr. Knowlton was our secretary last year.
Yes, I was the secretary.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'd like to ask the question, is anyone interested in the role of chair? Please don't be shy.
I'm happy to continue and interested to continue. That being said, I have also done it for 2 years, so if someone else is interested, I'd love to give them the opportunity.
Excellent.
I'm interested in serving in that position if you all think I'd be a good candidate for it.
Perfect. You know, we are in an abundance of riches when more than one person is excited about it. So thank you both for stepping up and being willing to serve. Is there anyone on the council who, or the committee, who would like to make a motion or have any discussion? Maybe if you all want to talk a little bit about why you'd like to be chair? No pressure. Jake, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah. Last year, I found sitting on the Tigard Budget Committee to be a really rewarding experience. It's amazing to see how this process directly impacts the lives of the residents of the city of Tigard. I also, I wanted to be fully involved. Even though I was the alternate, I sought to have 100% attendance, attend the subcommittee on social services and community events. And it's just my personality to want to do as much as I can whenever I'm involved with something. So that's why I'm interested in being chair. It seems like a really great opportunity to help out the city.
Thank you so much.
I'd love to support Jake's bid to be chair.
Excellent. Would somebody like to? Yes, Mr. Cadman.
Yeah, based on that, I'd like to make a motion that to nominate Jake Schlack for chair of the Budget Committee.
Can I get a second? Okay. Councilor Maureen Wolf has seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Will the city recorder please conduct a roll call vote?
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Singh,
Yes.
Councillor Wolf,
Yes.
Council President Hu,
Yes.
Mayor Lube,
Yes.
Budget Committee Community Member Carissa Benfield,
Yes.
Tim Cadman,
Yes.
Jim Knowlton,
Yes.
Kelly Piment,
Yes.
oh, I'm sorry, are you the alternate? I should not have called your name.
But thank you for including me.
Jake Slack,
Yes.
Leah Voigt.
Yes.
Congratulations, unanimously, Mr. Slack has been voted in as the Budget Committee Chair.
Thank you all for the opportunity. I look forward to working with you.
Excellent. Mr. Reimer, at this point, do I turn the meeting over to him to conduct the rest of it, or should I continue?
We can go either way, but I would recommend that we do turn it over to our new chair to guide us through the secretary position.
Mr. Schlack, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mayor Lube. Thrown into the deep end right now, I feel like. I believe the next item on the agenda is to request nominations for the secretary position of the committee. Is anyone interested specifically?
I have enjoyed being the secretary this past year. Unfortunately, I'm having surgery and will be out for a couple of months, so I probably don't want to volunteer again. So
This is Leah Voigt. I would be honored to serve as secretary.
If I could, I'd like to nominate Leah Voigt as the Secretary of the Budget Committee.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. City Recorder Krager, I'd like to ask for a roll call vote.
Counselor Shaw,
Yes.
Counselor Singh,
Yes.
Counselor Wolf,
Yes.
Council President Hu,
Yes.
Mayor Lube,
Yes.
Carissa Benfield,
Yes.
Tim Cadman,
Yes.
Jim Knowlton,
Yes.
Jake Schlack,
Yes.
Leah Voigt.
Yes.
The motion is adopted by a unanimous vote of the Budget Committee. All right, City Manager Reimer, would you like to tell us about the next item on the agenda?
Yep, so the next item, as you can see, is to appoint the 2 social services and event subcommittee members, and we'll move on to the next slide. This is comprised of 2 of our community committee members, 1 city councilor, and then 1 of our former city councilors, Marlon Henderson. A question for the mayor and the council. This Saturday at your goal setting, you will be talking about your liaison appointments. Did you want to defer that till then, or did you want to make that appointment tonight?
I think if somebody feels passionately and wants to serve, I don't have an issue appointing them tonight.
Okay, good. So we will turn it over to you. I don't know if Liz or someone wants to talk about the purpose of the subcommittee a little more so the new members understand what it is comprised of, the time commitment, and then from that point we'll look at having nominations again. Chair.
Yes, Liz, if you'd like to chat about it, that'd be great.
My name's Liz Lutz. I work in finance. 16 years.
Just
I know, I just had to say that. So this subcommittee is, like you said, comprised of 2 citizen members, 1 counselor, and former counselor Marland Henderson. And back in 2016, after he served in the city council, they gave him this social service grants, particularly for him for his passion of drug addiction, recovery, things like that. So part of our marijuana tax goes to his grant. So the social service committee will meet, we typically meet on a Friday, and the social service agencies come and give a 7 to 10 minute talk to all of the subcommittee members, and then we sit in a room in Red Rock and kind of hash out the dollars. And typically we capped it at about $105,000. Typically 70% goes to social services and 30% goes to community events such as the Balloon Festival, Tigard 4th of July, Downtown Alliance, things of that nature. So so then you make your recommendations and it goes into the budget as a proposed document, and it's just treated as other parts of the budget. So that's what it is. It's one full day of pretty intense, but it's really rewarding. People, you've served on it, you've loved it, yeah. So I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Liz. Are there any questions? Okay. Is anyone interested in serving on the subcommittee?
Yeah, this is Tim Cadman. I'd be happy to do it again, and if there are no others interested. I've done it a few years. Really enjoyed it. It's a long, intense day, but you learn a ton. And happy to step aside if there's others interested, but if not, I really enjoy doing it again too.
Yeah, this is Clarissa Benfield. I'd be interested as well. It would just depend on the day. I know last year the date changed around quite a bit, so it would kind of depend on when it's actually scheduled, but I would be interested as well.
So right now we've got it scheduled tentative for March 17th. That is a Friday.
Okay.
Councilor Wolf?
Yeah. Thank you, Jake. Yes, I would like to nominate myself or be interested in that position representing the council. So thank you.
Terrific. That's 3 people by my count. Is there anyone else who is like to put their name forward for consideration? All right, City Manager Reimer, I believe I should be asking, should I ask for a motion to appoint the slate?
Yeah, I think so. Probably just have a motion to have all 3, and then you can do it in one.
All right. Should I request the motion, or may I make the motion? I'd like to motion that Tim Cadman, Clarissa Benfield, and Councilor Wolf be appointed to the Subcommittee on Social Services and Community Events.
I'll second that.
City Recorder Krager, I'd like to have a roll call vote, please.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Singh,
Yes.
Councillor Wolf,
Yes.
Council President Hu,
Yes.
Mayor Lube,
Yes.
Carissa Benfield,
Yes.
Tim Cadman,
Yes.
Jim Knowlton,
Yes.
Jake Schlack,
Yes.
Leah Voigt.
Yes.
The motion is approved by a unanimous vote of the Budget Committee. All right. Thank you, everyone. I believe the next item is to review fiscal year 2023. City Manager Reimer.
Thank you, Chair Schlack. We appreciate that. So the next 3 items are really the heart of the meeting tonight, and to use a sports analogy, if we want to use track and field, we're really just at the starting line of the budget. And so, as you may suspect, the professional team, all the departments, department heads, have all been working on this for a number of months. Our finance team, Mr. Toller, and so we've been working internally, but from a budget committee standpoint, this is really the start. There's no financial decisions that we're asking for tonight, but it's really a chance to review some of the highlights from last year's budget, the one that we're working on right now, that obviously all of you influenced, ultimately made a recommendation to the City Council for adoption. And then our Finance Director, Cindy Trimp, will work through the fiscal year 24. We're calling them budget assumptions, but really a chance, just some of the things that we're paying attention to. And then we'll close it with the calendar to make sure that everyone's calendars work for those key dates, to make sure that we can start locking those in when we have so many of us trying to be available for those. So I will start with the fiscal year 23 budget review. As I said, it's a very high level presentation. And I think one of the things that you're going to hear from us, myself and Cindy and others, is that process, as well as the one we're moving into, we want it to be very open, very transparent for all of you involved, obviously, the community understanding where we're at. And so I will highlight a few of the things that we've been working on to continue that. So one of the first things, it's always good to celebrate, right? And to remind ourselves some of the excellent work. If you go in the finance department and look on the wall, there's 30-some plaques that reference these 2 awards that the city has won for a number of years. And so that's a credit to all the teammates that have worked here, that are working here now, the councils that have provided the stewardship, and the budget committees that work through every spring to get us to that point. And so just making sure we recognize that there's a lot of work that goes into making these happen, and a lot of people, including all of you. Another thing that is extremely exciting, so when we were sitting here last year and showing you the on the left, the graphic that says A1 and AA, the AAA was not there last year, but roughly 6 months ago or so, we were informed by Standard & Poor's that we are now a AAA community, which is the highest you can be, right? And so if you're thinking it from your own finances, having that credit rating that really allows you to get the best value for your money. So our AAA is something that we should be extremely proud of. I know we are. Once again, this is a reflection of many years of great work here, many years of very responsible budgets. And when the credit rating agencies are looking at that, they're looking at a variety of things. And this year they came back and said Tigard has now been elevated. And Mr. Toller, I'm not sure if you can speak to it, but there's a number of communities, but there's not many AAA rated around the country. And so this is something we should really be proud of, and I think we should make sure our community understands that in terms of being the good steward of public funds. So celebrate that for everyone in this room and others. So last year, as you may recall, for those that were involved, we really focused on our long-term fiscal health. Obviously, that's something you're always paying attention to, but we really called it out last year and looked at some key areas. We've tried to highlight what we called Tigard Forward for our current budget, and really looking at our diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how we're advancing that. Improving our community safety, something that we'll never, are satisfied with. We want to keep making investments there. looking at how we are more connected as a community in many different ways, right? This is not just about trail connections, but how we're connected through technology, how we're connected at our library in terms of community members coming together. And then looking at ways to help our small businesses, community members through the pandemic. And so many of these things are things that we'll continue to work on. These are not just a check the box and we move on. And so I'm sure as the council gets into some of their conversations and the budget committee will be talking about some of the key themes as well. So we talked about making sure that we're transparent and open. And so of course the last couple of years, a big kudos to our communications and comms team, our assistant city manager, all the department heads, to really looking at how we've been sharing the budget. And so as you know, there's hundreds of pages, there's many numbers, and we've tried to add a narrative. We've always had a narrative, and we've tried to now boil it down into a couple other documents, which was our budget in brief, which we've had for a couple of years, and now our CIP in brief. And so 2 documents that try to take those multiple hundreds of pages and just at least share the top line information so community members can at least get a sense of it. And if they're interested, they start clicking on links and you can explore, you know, all 400 pages if you'd like. And so these I think have been well received by others and have really helped elevate the understanding of our budget. Just a reminder, so where we're at, there's multiple pieces to our budget. So we have overall just under $270 million budget right now. About $100 million of that is going to our operations, and as you can see, 50% is general fund. And then about $79 million is in our capital improvement plan, which we'll be talking about as well. We also have a 6-year plan, and so that 6-year plan is about $260 million, and we'll talk about the capital improvement program a little more. And then we also have the Town Center Development Agency, who has a budget outside of what we've just talked about of about $13 million. And so as we go through this, over the course of the next several months, you're going to hear about each of these areas in much more detail, and we're available tonight to answer any questions you may have. So one of the things we like to show is, so where does the city's annual revenues come from? And this is really focused on that first budget number of $266 million. Many people think, because we're a public agency, that the majority of our funding may come through the taxes that are paid, the property taxes. But as you can see in here, property taxes make up $24 million of the $140 million. So it's a significant dollar amount, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, there's other things that we do to really have a diverse way of collecting revenues here. And so the charges for service that we have, our permits, and many other things that we'll get into as we talk about the development of the fiscal year 24. Just always important for us to remember that there's many areas that our funds come from, and we'll talk about that a little more. So when you look at your property tax dollars, another thing is we all pay our property taxes, and many community members may think they're paying it all to the city. The fact is it's spread across many underlying taxing jurisdictions, and so the dollar bill is meant to demonstrate where a taxpayer's $1 goes each time. And so you can see for us, we're at about 18 cents on every dollar. And so that equals to the 24 million. The school district obviously receives the majority of it, and then Washington County and many others are also receiving funds. And so when we're talking property taxes in the future, we're talking about just our portion of property taxes and not the property taxes that are going to the other jurisdictions that are creating their own budgets. So where does the money go? That is really small on that screen. How is it on that screen? Pretty small too. I think the key ones to look at, and we'll make sure this is larger in the next slides, Public Works, Public Safety, so our police department, Public Works, 2 of our larger departments with several expenses. And these are in your packet as well, so if you want to go back and look at them. Just to give you a sense of where the money is spread out as well in those key areas. And then you can see obviously City Council, Administrative Services, et cetera, are included. So I started this by talking about looking at our long-term fiscal health, a lot of conversations around that. And I really do want to say kudos to the Budget Committee, the Council, all of our teammates, Steve Toller and his team, for some of the efforts that we were able to pull off last year. You may recall last year, I believe it was the January meeting, we really started talking about internal service fund development, different policy levels, and we had a little more decision making that night because we needed some guidance so we could understand what we'd bring back to you in April. And at that time, we just laid out some of that high level, what we think it's going to take. Lo and behold, we were able to develop 3 of the major internal service funds, ISFs, and we were able to fund them 100%, which was one of the things that we were really working on. Do we fund them over a 3-year period, a 5-year period, a 7-year period? Sitting in this room, I think, is where we came up with, if we're able to look at different fund balances, can we pre-fund all of them so we can move forward instantly with that? I can tell you, during this year's budget development, it's been really nice having those. I remember sitting with Mike Nolep, looking at our information technology one, and there was not much of a conversation because the majority of the expenditures coming through our information technology is in a lot of our replacements of our major systems that we have. And so there's obviously operating budgets that we'll work on, but looking at what are the significant changes, those were already in the internal service funds. And so that allowed us to be much more efficient, like we were talking about, efficient in our time, also making sure that we had the funds there. So I don't know, Mr. Toller, is there anything you want to add to that on how things are going? Or?
I will just say that in our experience in working with cities across the United States, cities that are doing things like you are doing in Tigard, there's no question why you got a AAA rating, because you're doing the things that are important to exercise your fiduciary responsibility, and yet still providing the quality services that you're trying to provide to the community. So that said, this area of internal service funds and doing these proactive set-asides is something that not many agencies are doing, but the ones that are well run and fiscally managed well, they're doing that, and you're doing that now. And so it's just it's a great thing. Small little tweaks behind the scene, behind the green curtain that we all have to kind of work through to make sure it is operationally in place. But I think that from a big picture perspective, you're setting aside the monies and you're helping really yourselves and the community understand what is the cost of doing business. Not just looking at a huge financial system that has to be replaced, 10 years from now, but you're proactively setting aside money for that so that you understand what those costs are. So I just want to say kudos for you for making that decision, and proof is in the pudding and getting this into this next budget for this next year. So.
Thanks, Steve. I just want to say thanks again to the team that's been part of this. When we first came together, obviously it's like, what are we going to try to do? And many people who are part of the meeting today were integral in developing these funds. And so, as I said, they're really starting to pay off. And once you develop it, doesn't mean you don't pay attention to them, right? Every year you're working on them, you're making sure your assumptions are accurate. And so those are some things we're going through right now, is updating them. But in terms of just the budgeting process, it really has helped streamline it. I also want to talk about 3 positions that really lead to this as well. So we have our asset management position. We have millions and millions of dollars of assets, especially in public works area. Brian, who's our public works director sitting over here, him and his team recommended this last year, and so this is going to help pay dividends as we can strategically make sure that we are managing all of our assets appropriately. Also, our system development charges, so we call these SDCs, so you'll start hearing SDCs. We brought in a new teammate really helping us focus on this. As a reminder, this was a lot of our SDC work over the course of the last many years has been multiple departments trying to work together to make it happen. And I would say this is another sport analogy. This is our quarterback now who has come in to make sure that we're coordinated in how we're setting our rates, how we're collecting them, how we're expending them. And Danielle's doing a great job, I think you would admit, coming in and just working with many departments that are part of these. So, and then the last one is our first diversity, equity, inclusion, and we've added the word belonging manager, so DEIB manager. Kurt was hired, and really once again, our organization community is only going to be as strong as our efforts in this area. And so why is it under long-term fiscal health? Because it really is part of us being a strong organization. Will not only pay dividends in other ways, it's also going to pay dividends, financially for us. And so, thank you to the Budget Committee and the Council last year for stepping forward and approving everything that's on this sheet to position us better for these coming years. So, thank you again. So, we'll spend just a little time here on the CIP in brief, just a few slides. So, our capital improvement plan, you'll hear capital improvement plan, capital improvement program. So when we say CIP, and you're going to hear it a lot during the budget, is we're talking about our major infrastructure. So just a few key did you knows just to kind of get us going here. You can see that we have just under 300 miles of water pipes. The 25% cast iron is the thing I think Brian and the team are focusing on to make sure that we don't have issues with our water system. Street signs for the city our size, and 8,500 street signs that we're taking care of, our miles of streets, the number of bridges, stormwater, and there's many other things. But just to give you a sense of the assets that we talked about with the asset manager position, and then a capital improvement plan that has to be developed around many different areas. So the process, how do we build our capital improvement plan? And so it starts with our system plan and our engagement. And so engagement's a key part of what we do, obviously. So our engineering team and many others, as we develop our major system plans. We just had our Parks and Recreation System Plan as our most recent. Hundreds of hours of time meeting with community members, the input we get that really influence the ultimate plan that's brought forward. Then we work on the prioritizing and funding it. Then we design and build them, and then we maintain and repair. So it's just kind of, and Brian can probably speak to it more, and Joe W., but it's really something that just continues, and we start going through the planning, visioning, funding it through our budget process, building them, and then it really gets into the operations and maintenance through our budget process as well. So you're seeing it in different areas, both in the capitals as well as the operations. Ideally, as we bring on new assets, we have the resources and capacity to add those to the system, and we'll be talking about that, about our park system as a good example in other areas. As our city grows, so do our assets, and so does the capacity that we need to make sure we can responsibly maintain them. So at the same time, as you can see on here, it starts with the projects list and the budgets that are developed based on those needs I'm talking about, that the priorities have been set by the council from what we hear from the community. And then we look at multiple funding areas, and we're going to hit on those in a few minutes here on how we really fund them. And then ultimately the goal of having those well-performing systems in place. So these are the top 5 funding sources. So we talked about having a significant $250 million plus 6-year program in place or plan in place. Our water system is our number 1 area where our resources and revenues come from. Then we have our transportation development tax, our street maintenance fee. Here's the water SDC, system development charge, and then our parks SDC. So these are the areas that are coming in funding over that 6-year period are key areas. Obviously, this isn't all the funds, and so as we get into the budget development, we'll talk about that more for fiscal year 24. Also, then you look at the systems that we have. Here's our major systems. So we have the water system, we have the sewer system, stormwater, streets, parks, and our city facilities. And so one of the things to point out here is our city facilities. As many of you know, for a number of years, we've been talking about the replacement of many of our facilities, not our library, which is 17, 18 years old now, but looking at where you're sitting now, high priority is our police department, public works, and then the rest of the city hall. Those numbers are not built into here because that's something that we're working on for the future. And so if we're successful in the future of coming together and putting that project together and working with the community on the funding plan, you'd see a change in the city facilities. But it's important to know that we don't have anything budgeted for that today. That's a future plan. But all the other ones follow those system plans that we talked about, and then the rate structures that we bring in place, and ultimately the council will approve a rate structure to help fund the necessary operations and capital improvements. So that's very high level on fiscal year 23. That takes hundreds of pages, I said, into 5, 6, 7, 8 slides. But happy to answer any questions you may have, either reminding ourselves of what we did last year. As I said, we have many leadership team members here as well who can help add any detailed answers you'd like. So, Chair, I'll turn over to you right now to see if there's any questions, and then we can move on from there.
Sure, I think it would be good to go around the committee probably and just give everyone an opportunity to ask any questions if they'd like to. Should we? I can call people. That works, or sorry, you've got me on the spot on the first night. Tim Cadman, would you be interested in kicking us off? Yeah, questions if you have any.
Just one general one. You may or may not have the answer today, but just out of curiosity, how many FTE positions are open at this point relative to the budget?
They're going to ask how many do we have? 342 is what we have. How many are open? I think we're running probably in the 10 to 15%. So we can follow up with the exact number. It fluctuates a little, but there are some areas in PD, Public Works, and a few others where we have.
Okay. Right. Yeah, that's the only question I've got.
Okay.
Thank you. Clarissa Benfield?
No major questions for me at this time. Thank you.
Jim Knowlton? Jim, if you have any questions, feel free to.
No, sorry, no questions for me.
All good, thank you. Leah Voigt?
Yeah, I would. I would love to hear a little bit more about different ways that our DEI, or the person in the DEI position, can help provide some guidance for our budget committee and our decisions as we're going forwards. In other places that I'm involved, we have an equity lens, which consists of 4 different areas and about 4 different questions in each. When we're making policy decisions, we're encouraged to ask ourselves those questions, to look at impacts, historical factors, all sorts of things. And I would be really interested in getting some guidance from the person in the DEI position to inform, to help us be more informed going forwards as a budget committee.
First, thank you for bringing that up and posing that question. So Kurt, who is our DEIB manager, he is just completing his first few month assessment. And so I think he's meeting with us, the leadership team, next Tuesday, in fact, to share his assessment on what he's learned and some of his thoughts for going forward. So we will make sure that that's part of our conversation. And as we get into our next budget committee, well, hopefully we can share some stuff ahead of time. And then as we get into the committee conversations, we'll make sure that we are bringing that lens forward. I am happy to share that, the team every year, we're evolving in that area. And so excited this year with bringing Kurt on to help us even more. And so you see it reflected hopefully in our CIP and operations budgets, but we will make sure to make sure it's front and center, which is great to hear. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Going around the room of the citizen members, I guess I'm next. I don't have any questions, but it's really great to hear about the success of the ISFs. I remember spending a lot of time on that last year, and it's awesome to hear that that's contributing, as Mr. Toller mentioned, to our AAA rating. The fact that we were able to fully fund them in a year is just really awesome to hear that success on day 1 of this cycle. Kelly Pemmon, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions at this time. I'll probably have questions next time.
Awesome. Councillor Hu, do you have any questions?
I may have question regarding budget assumptions, especially regarding CIPs, but I see that's the next topic, so I will wait. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you very much. I do have one question about, typically we have a biannual community survey that's done, and that helps inform our goals. And City Manager Emmer, can you remind me of the last time we may have done that survey?
I may phone a friend, Assistant City Manager Nyland, may be able to help me, but it's been a few years. We are planning one this year, in fact. It's been a few years since the last one. Kathy, do you have any additional information, please?
I believe the last time we officially did it was in 2017. We have done a series of polls since then that have been related more towards levies and things we were considering for ballot measures. But as City Manager Reimer mentioned, we do have funding in this current budget and are planning to launch that community survey this year. Thank you very much.
Mayor Lube?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Singh?
I don't have any questions either. Thanks.
Councillor Wolf?
Just a quick clarification, the ARPA COVID dollars, those finalized June 24, the end of 24, just a clarification on how long we have access to those funds before they expire.
End of 24.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Youth Councillor Nog?
I have nothing.
Apologies. Next section is to discuss fiscal year 2024 budget assumptions. City Manager Reimer.
Well, thank you. I will kick this off and I'll hand it over to our finance director. Just for clarification, by the end of 24 committed, spent by the end of 26. So we're paying close attention to that as well. So now we move into fiscal year 24. As I mentioned, our team has been working for a number of months on many things. One of the key things that the team's been working on from across the organization is our revenue assumptions. So really understanding what resources will we have before we start a spending plan. And so Mr. Toller and many others have been involved, many who are on the call today, looking at all of our the revenues that we have in there. And that's a key thing, as like I said, we have to make sure we understand what we have before we start a spending plan. That said, at the same time, the departments are working on both their operating and CIP, and so you have some things that are happening parallel with people involved in the same conversations. And the direction that we've shared with the organization is it's going to be a lean year again. We'll get into that in some of our assumptions, and to really look at, once again, it'll be funding the highest priorities, maintaining our services, and looking at what are some of the previous commitments that have been made and drawing those out and making sure that those are the things that are funded. So as we get into the April conversations, those are things that we'll be talking about, or what are those previous commitments and other areas like that as we bring those forward. As well as this weekend is a significant day for this organization, the city council, and the community. It's the goal setting time for our city council. And so all day Friday we'll be spending at the library. It's open to the public, so those of you that would like to come in and see how goal setting works. That's a facilitated process that will go through a day and a half. It'll conclude midday on Saturday. And so I bring that up because what we hear then will also be some of the things that we will be using to make sure that the recommended budget, or the proposed budget to all of you, aligns with what we hear on this weekend from the city council as well. So many parts are in play, and that's why I think meeting in January is so beneficial, that we can all have this conversation today and not wait till March or April and kind of catch up to where we were, so we can let you know where we're at. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cindy. I do want to say kudos to Cindy, Eric King, our Assistant Finance Director. One of the things that we haven't put in the slides is some of the things that have been happening behind the scenes this year as well. And really, to both their credit, I think Eric's leadership, we've been spending a lot of time in our investment area. And so with some new strategies, we are seeing a much healthier portfolio because of that, and we'll be talking about it during the budget committee. But I think it's important to recognize, I think of your comments last year about, we need to look at things a little differently, and I think you're using fleet as the number of fleet we have, the years for the replacement cycle. The same thing with our investments, right? We have literally millions of dollars invested, right? And so with Eric joining us, he took a keen interest in that and has come forward with some suggestions that, as Cindy has said, his favorite word is tranche. So every 3 months he has different tranches being invested, but it's really paying off. It literally is paying dividends, and that's going to influence what we are able to do, not only this year coming up, but as importantly in future years. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Cindy, and she's going to walk you through our assumptions.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, so as Steve mentioned, it's very early in the budget process, but we did sit down with the departments and the programs, and we looked at our current budget, and then we looked at revenues, and then we're talking now about what do we need in fiscal year 24, with the mindset that revenues are not coming in as high as we thought they were going to come in, and so we want to make sure that we are honoring our current commitments and we're not overextending ourselves, and that we are maintaining our current priorities. And we'll find out even more, this weekend what some of the priorities are. We want to make sure that we honor those. And then also with a vision of just being very fiscally responsible. And again, like Steve said earlier, transparency is really big and it's really important to me. So, and it's important to the city. So we are more than happy to answer questions. Again, if we don't have the questions right now, we have staff that's available, and then we'll certainly get those answers to you. So we welcome questions. Let's see. So the economy will continue to impact the city's budget. Like I said, revenues are lower than we expected. We are looking, the Washington County General Fund Washington County gave us a report on the general fund here recently, and it's lower than they anticipated also. And so they are looking at budget reductions in Washington County. So we just want to keep that mindset of making sure that we're being responsible. We also want to make sure that ARPA funding, we have lots of ARPA funding that's out there right now, and how are we going to support that in the future? And so we're looking at different funding sources, federal funding, state funding, talking to legislators, trying to find out ways that we can continue, our houselessness initiative and all of our other initiatives. So we're looking under every rock that we can to make sure that we can utilize funding if it's out there. We want to find it. Again, we mentioned the Washington County's general fund that's facing some significant budget shortfalls, and so we're just keeping that in mind. The general fund financial forecast expenditures is outpacing the revenues right now in Washington County, so we just want to be aware of that. It's about 2%. So, okay, let's see. Yeah, again, cut budget year, so. Again, so the city will continue to receive a contributed capital as long as the city continues to grow. And we're building into our budget a 40% contingency for all applied projects because of it's just much more expensive to do business right now. So we're building that in. And again, we're leveraging any funds that we can possibly find to make sure that we can fund our capital projects and honor our current commitments. And then again, fiscal health, while maintaining our service levels and our existing commitments, we want to make sure that we do our core business really well. And that's important to us, and it's important to our team. It's pretty exciting, what Steve mentioned about our portfolio. We'll have more details about that later, but anywhere that we can find extra funding or do business better or be more efficient, we're looking for it. So we're open to suggestions. We look forward to working with you. This will be my second time around. I think I got here just about halfway through, so I look forward to starting from the beginning all the way to the end and working with you all. So again, reach out if you have questions, and you can reach out anytime. We're more than happy to be transparent and answer questions.
Thanks, Cindy. So Steve Toller works close with our team as well. And is there anything you want to add about fiscal year 24 at this point, just the budget development?
Maybe just to provide a little bit of a greater context in terms of what we're seeing, not only here in Oregon, in the Washington, Multnomah County, area, but also across the United States. I mean, inflation has been a big discussion, right, on a national level. And the way that you're seeing that being impacted here in Tigard is, for example, the availability or lack thereof of vehicles to be able to replace some of the vehicles that you're looking at. Vehicle prices have gone up by 15–20%, and so there's some impacts there's going to be had there, and we're going to be, looking at those when it comes to the replacement, for the fleet. And those inflationary impacts are also having, and you've seen it, with the gas prices increasing, right? And so that's having some impacts not only with fleet operations, but when you talk about capital improvement projects, and when you're looking at significant investment in road infrastructure, let's say, and a lot of those are petroleum-based products, the prices of those have increased dramatically. And so I think as there are discussions about where we're going with respect to CIP planning, as well as some of our operational aspects, we're going to have to take into consideration those inflationary impacts and what those might mean, not only for tomorrow, meaning fiscal 24, but also in the long-range forecast and what that's going to look like and what pressures are there going to be. Steve mentioned, you might be at about a 10 or 15% vacancy rate. That's not uncommon. It is tough to find employees right now, especially those that are skilled in municipal service. And you're seeing it in private industry, I know. And so it's a pressure that weighs on local government to make sure that you're providing competitive wages to be able to recruit and retain those employees that you need. And so I think that that's something that is embedded within what Cindy was saying and some of those, expenditure assumptions. But on the revenue side, in fact, I have a chart up right now in front of my computer here from Western Title. Housing prices have continued to go up pretty nicely. They've kind of stabilized a little bit, if for no other reason, because interest rates have increased quite a bit. But you're still seeing a pretty healthy market here in Tigard in the area, and so that could bode very well for assessed valuation and the impacts that has on property taxes. And with what you were saying about the investment portfolio and whatnot, I mean, we're seeing 5-year treasuries that have increased by 200 basis points, 300 basis points. That's 3%. Just in the last year plus or so, as a reflection of some of the interest rates. And so it's hard as an individual if you have a mortgage, and especially if it's an adjustable rate, but when you have a portfolio that you're trying to manage as a local government, putting that money to better use is definitely going to bode well for you. So anyway, that's kind of preview of coming attractions of some of the inflationary and economic issues I think that we're seeing throughout the United States and here on the West Coast and definitely here in Oregon. And so I just wanted to be able to share that with you, and we'll have more to come.
So Chair, that concludes our presentation in this area. Once again, if there's any questions or additional information or things that all of you want to share, let's make sure we pay attention to this moving forward. We're open to either the questions or advice and ideas for putting the budget together. So I'll turn it back to you.
Sure. I think we can go around the committee again and just give everyone an opportunity to ask any questions or raise any ideas. Clarissa Benfield, would you like to go first?
Nothing at this time for me. I think I'll probably have some more thoughts as I digest some of this, so thank you.
Tim Cadman?
Yeah, I've got two hopefully quick questions, and again, if you can't answer today, that's fine. Could you say a little bit more about the revenue shortfalls? We've got several sources. Can you talk a little bit about which ones are falling short, and if there are any that have been stable or as predicted?
The majority of what I was talking about is general fund, and we're looking at the Washington County, the report that they gave us, and then also the Office of Economic Development gave a report in March, and they'll be giving another report in March about revenues, and so we're really curious to kind of see what's happened in a year. So the information I gave you is based on that. But we do have a revenue team here that gets together. We've met, 4 times now? And we're looking at each of the individual funds. I'm not super concerned that we're having a huge reduction. I'm just wanting to make sure that we're staying stable. And so that's what we're looking at. So when we look at inflation and we look at everything else that's going on, we just want to be careful. But the exact numbers we'll certainly have for you, but I lean more towards just being careful and making sure that we're very responsible.
Okay, great. One other one. So you talked about the inflationary impact on our capital investments, and we've got roughly 40% contingency worked into everything, or is that relatively new? The reason I ask is if we've got approved CIP projects and we didn't used to put in that contingency, and we've been living for 15 years without inflation, have we overcommitted ourselves? Do we have to go back and relook at those CIP budgets that have already been approved to make sure they're still affordable?
I'm going to have our assistant city manager. We had this conversation when the team met a month or so ago, how we're going to pull our budget together. And so I'll let Emily talk a little more about that.
Yeah, thank you very much. And also our city engineer, Joe Wisniewski, is also online, so I'll invite him to chime in as well. I would say that the decision to add on the 40% contingency is a new one applied to projects in planning now. As we have a 6-year CIP, that there might be some value in looking at projects that are in design or even in construction, as we're seeing material costs, construction costs, labor come in pretty high, particularly projects that are going out to bid now. I'd invite City Engineer Wisniewski to chime in if there's more to add.
Thanks, Emily. I think the only thing I would add is last year going into budget, we started out with a 30% contingency on those new projects and the planning level projects. Because we see this inflation continue, that's why we're proposing the 40% value for this year. So as projects get closer to construction and the risk involved with carrying contingency would go down, we adjust our budgets appropriately. So not all projects have that high of a contingency factored in because of the phase that they're in.
Jim Knowlton.
I have no comments or questions.
Kelly Pement.
Nothing at this time.
For myself, the one question I have is more process oriented about, we have a lot of factors that are in play right now, especially around revenue shortfalls, inflation, and so on. I remember last year the budget committee was supplied an Excel tool in order to see how some of these factors will play out. I'm curious if that's, once we have a better idea of where these variables are going to land by the time April and May rolls around, if we're going to get a similar tool to sort of play around with these and understand how these impacts work.
Forgive me, Jake, was the question really what are some of the key variables that we're going to be focusing on? Or?
It's more about whether that sort of forecasting tool will be provided, and if there are any particular variables you'd like to call out, I'd be happy to hear about
you were keenly interested in that.
I'm a data guy.
Sure,
so
that absolutely, and we're going to be updating that tool to incorporate some of these key drivers in the assumptions, and to really be able to see then what the impacts of those are going to be, whether it's inflation, whether it's what's happening with gas tax versus property tax, et cetera. We'll definitely be incorporating that and making some educated, informed decisions that ultimately Budget Committee and Council is going to have to make in terms of where you're spending your resources. And so we'll be updating that forecast. And I know some of you might be a little bit more interested in playing around with it than others, perhaps. But I think it's going to be a great tool to be able to show and demonstrate, real time if desired. What are some of the impacts with some of the assumptions that are made? What happens with our general fund if we assume 5% tax growth, property tax growth, as opposed to 3%, and understanding what those impacts are. I think it really helps with an informed council and informed budget committee on decisions that you'll need to make. So does that touch on your question there, Jake?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Do you mind giving just a 30-second overview of what the tool is for our newer members?
Sure. Yeah, in 30 seconds, what is a financial forecast? Is that what you're asking, Steve? I like to say that a financial forecast is just basically math. It's really the key is where it's based on accurate information and as realistic assumptions as you can do when you're crystal ball gazing, right? But in essence, what the tool is it takes our prior revenue and expenditure trends, looks at that, and then based on what is proposed in the proposed budget that will be brought for you, that's the city manager's proposed budget, will then also incorporate some trends of what we see long term for all the various line items, whether the revenue line items and the expenditures by category, personnel costs, benefits, and all those things. And that it allows you to be able to see that graphically. Some of us, can see numbers and we can see a story from those numbers, and others, it's really helpful to see a picture. Sometimes it's worth more than 1,000 words. And so we'll be, providing that tool so that you can see what some of the impacts are of those assumptions that we've made and that are being proposed. And it really helps, I think, you. Again, I've got to tout your AAA rating with all the other agencies that I'm working with, because the more that you can see the current decisions that you're making informed by what the potential future is going to be, you're going to be much better off and making informed, important, fiscally aware decisions that you're making, and the financial forecast is a way to be able to see that. It was more than 30 seconds, Steve, sorry, but anyway, powerful tool.
Thank you. Leah Voigt?
Yeah, so as we talk about inflation, right, the cost of everything is going up. And as you mentioned, our revenue sources, some of them are right based off property taxes, based off gas taxes. And so in that way, those numbers going up work in our favor. What would you say the comparison is between how fast our costs are rising versus our income is rising?
So that's what we're still evaluating right now, and that'll inform what we bring forward in April. If you think back to last year, though, when we showed you the couple different forecasts, as it has been for a number of years in the long run, right, the expenses are outpacing revenues, and there's that line in 2028, 29, I don't remember the exact year, where you see them crossing again, and then, depleting some of our reserves, our general fund, just thank you, on that. So we'll update all that, and then this year we'd envision talking much more about what are those impacts that are being asked now to like the real dollar amounts of impact. So just don't have it quite yet.
Councillor Hu?
Thank you. Guess I won't ask you if it's an art or science in terms of forecast. My question have to deal with helping a relatively new person to make this process less of abstract and more concrete. So like use the example of 121st Street. Right now it's finally being rebuilt to add sidewalks and stuff. That's great. So I heard about that 7 years ago when I was at the Transportation Advisory Committee. And that time, the committee really wanted that sidewalk. And a couple years later, I heard, I believe the Washington County is paying most of that. So can you just walk me through, the process of when you hear that we're going to get the money from the county, how do you put that number into the budget? When did you put the number in the budget? Or do you actually put the number in the budget? Or is that just a separate item that Washington County is paying for? So maybe just use that example so it will be less abstract process for me. That I appreciate it. Thank you.
Joe, are you able to start walking through from a project standpoint, and all of us can add in as well?
Yes, thanks City Manager Reimer and Council President Hu for the question. So the 121st Avenue project is a county MISTIP funded project. And using that one as an example, what we would have done there is the project is identified in a transportation system plan. So all of our capital systems have a system plan that identifies the need. And then that also goes through a funding strategy or a revenue component. And then we take that, which would develop the project list and identify projects for future CIP development. So 121st was selected as a project in the CIP years back, as you mentioned. The CIP is a 6-year forecast, so 6 to 7 years out, projects are getting added. When that project was selected for MISTIP funding, which is a grant application, that revenue source would have got added into the CIP. And if you look at a CIP sheet, it might not be very obvious that the outside funding source is there, because the CIP sheets typically only show city revenue sources, but we also identify the total project cost, and we will add comments about those large grants on the sheet. So it might say $100,000 of city funds because of something else that we're paying for, but the project cost might be in the millions of dollars because it's being funded and delivered by the county. But the process in general starts with that system plan. Projects are identified. They're ran through public engagement efforts such as the TTAC committee, brought to the budget committee for consideration into the CIP and the budget, and then it moves into project delivery. And that's a 30-second quick overview of the full process, and definitely happy to talk more about any and all the steps. But let me know if there's more questions to that, and I'm happy to answer them.
That's good for now. Thank you.
Mayor Lube?
Yes, thank you. I think my question is generally, you know, this total Tyler project that we've taken on, I think is still the right decision, becoming a more data-informed city. And I'm curious because I know our initial planning wasn't sufficient and we've had to expand the budget a little bit more. Just looking forward, really, how far are we into this? How much longer is it taking? What additional, like what budget is it taking up? Because this isn't going to last forever with some of the positions and additional funding. And so how will that help us as it wraps up from potentially going off the cliff, because that's a non-recurring expense. So really just wondering big picture, and that doesn't necessarily have to be totally answered today, but just as we go through the budget process of where we are, because that's such an outlier to our regular daily city business.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Loop. That is something that we will be highlighting during the budget process as well. I'll be providing some additional information to the council on some of the processes. We're looking at an assessment right now, just to do exactly what you just said. What was the original scope of the project? What was the timelines we established? What were the resources we needed, both financial as well as human resources? Looking at this time, where are we at with that, and then developing the path forward. And so we're doing that in the short term right now, and that will influence some of the budgetary decisions. So, and we're happy to, you know, obviously have more Tyler conversations as we move forward.
Great, thank you. The only other thing I will say is I look forward to this weekend as we continue to move forward on priorities and goals as a council, and how that will show in our budget, because that really shows where our priorities are, where our money is going. And I think that's a testament to the community, what our priorities are.
Youth Councilor Nog?
Okay, so my first question, there's a lot that I don't understand, but I think that's okay. My first one is, why are we short on the revenue? Is there like a reason, or is it just because?
So exactly, once again, that's what we're analyzing right now, and then trying to understand where are those areas, what is driven by you know, potential inflation or other things that are impacting the economy. I don't have any specifics right now. I don't know, Steve or Cindy, if either of you have enough information, and I know we have a few other teammates that are involved as well.
Some of the revenue that we're talking about is general fund, and we receive general fund from not just property tax, but also from marijuana tax and gas tax and liquor tax. And so people are spending less money, so we're getting less revenue. That's a super high level way to look at it. Although this year, compared to last year, marijuana tax and liquor tax are increasing just a tad bit, so yeah.
Aren't there more people moving into Tigard? Wouldn't that mean there would be more people paying property taxes?
Yes, that's correct. And it's my understanding, is it a 4 or 5% growth in the city of Tigard? So yeah, we have had a growth, Heidi, or
Yeah, I don't want to overstep or just because of the finance background. Yes, our tax base is getting bigger, but as we talk about, say our expenses are growing at 6% and our rate is only increasing at 3%, those additional people moving in are suppressing the 6% growth. So it's taking bites out of the growth that we can't cover with what we're allowed to grow. So we can't charge more than 3% every year, but if our expenses are 6%, right, there's a 3% gap. But if people are moving in, their property taxes are actually eating away at that gap and making the cliff a little farther out. Does that make sense? They're making the pie bigger, but there's still not enough pie to cover the expenses. I hope that's helpful.
yes. Thank you.
Councilor Shaw?
Yes, thank you very much. My understanding is that both Washington County and the state of Oregon are factoring in even more significant reductions for FY 2025 and beyond. And are we going to be factoring those elements in as well? So as it was mentioned, current decisions now are informed by those dollars, and we certainly don't want to overcommit, but just wondering how we're going to be factoring that in as well. Thank you.
Yes, overall, I think in a general sense, we'll be looking at not only fiscal year 24, which is what you'll be looking at recommending and ultimately adopting, but then we have our multi-year forecasts where we try to factor in some other things, and that's where we pay attention to what we learned from the state, through the league, and other sources. And so I think, as Cindy said, we believe the next reports will be coming out in the next couple months, which will help inform some of those maybe longer term forecasts.
Councillor Singh?
Thank you so much. So yeah, I just wanted to zoom out. My comment is mainly focused around bringing like a climate and equity lens to the budget process. So the Inflation Reduction Act is set to invest, I think, $369 billion in the clean energy and climate action. That's not all going to Oregon, but there's a lot of steps I think our city and region can and should take to best position us for success in leveraging those dollars and translating them into meaningful benefits for our communities. And I'll reiterate this at our retreat on Friday and Saturday. But I think it's an opportunity for Tigard to really make sure there are strong programs as well as staff and community-led committees and boards in place, like we're doing with DEIB, to make it easier for our community members to see improvements to their home energy efficiency and health, and access to electric vehicles and rooftop solar. Yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up and just have it on our radar for upcoming budget cycle, and just be aware of the federal investment that's coming down as well as state. So yeah, I look forward to working with the budget committee and finance team and Tigard community members to make sure we're leading with equity, health, as well as climate resiliency in mind. Thanks.
Councillor Wolf?
Just really appreciate Councillor Singh's lens or perspective and framework as we progress with this work, and I have no additional comments or questions. Thanks.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, we can move to the next item, which is to review the budget calendar for this year. Confidential Executive Assistant Lutz,
So, important dates. So we're going to, the March 17th, again, is the Social Service and Subcommittee proposed. So now that we have the subcommittee, I'll be getting together with, Mayor Snyder used to say that all the time. I'll be getting together with that subcommittee to make sure that date is going to work for everyone. So we'll be talking about that. April 7th, we distribute the proposed budget. You'll be getting a 2 to 3 inch binder that will have all the documentation in there. And then around that time, we do offer budget training, and I was just kind of corresponding. We're going to be talking a little bit more about CIP development. I think that's important too for this newer budget committee. So we'll be focusing on that and also reading the operational budgets. So we'll be talking about some of that. We do offer open door meetings to the budget committee as well as to the public. So it's just kind of a come in and ask any kind of questions after you've had an opportunity to review the budget. April 22nd, May 1st, and May 8th are the budget committee meetings. They take place in this room. April 22nd is a Saturday. It's an all-day meeting, about 8:30 to 4:30. And then May 1st and May 8th are typically 6:30 to about 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the evening. And again, they'll be here in this room. So, and June 6th is adoption. So, with the council. So that's kind of just the big the big number or the big dates that are important for you.
Liz, is it fair, first, thank you. Is it fair to, that we'll send out something to everyone to double check calendars before we lock in? These are what we're proposing. And so I'm trying to give you multiple months in advance notice. But if there's a major issue, we need to know earlier than later so we can make sure that all members are available on the date. So.
We just have to have it adopted by June 30th. That's the drop dead date. So, yes, happy to answer any questions, and feel free to contact me if you have any conflicts or questions specific to these dates or budgets or anything. Jake.
Thank you. Are there any questions about the forthcoming schedule? If not, I just want to say I'm happy to see that we have 3 budget meetings planned over April and May. I remember that being an addition last year, and I'm happy to see that we're continuing that this year. So thank you, everyone. That is the end of my agenda on this document. Mayor Lou, please help.
I would just like to give you a round of applause for handling that so well. You didn't have a lot of notice and you just jumped right in, so thank you so much for managing that. And thank you for all of your very thoughtful input. Again, I think this is one of the most important things that we can do, and I don't want to undervalue at all the importance of these conversations that we're having now to influence the budget as we go forward. There are no non-agenda items tonight. City Manager Reimer, I don't believe you have an administrative report this evening.
Correct, Mayor.
Excellent. All right, we have no executive session, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Excellent. Will the city recorder please conduct a roll call vote?
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Singh,
Yes.
Councillor Wolf,
Yes.
Council President Hu,
Yes.
Mayor Lube.
Yes. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.